There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone, but from living surrounded by people who fear you instead of knowing you. Dante Caruso had lived with that loneliness his entire adult life. It wasn't that there weren't bodies around him. There were always guards, associates, women who wanted his power and his money. But no one truly saw him. No one dared. Because Dante was the man everyone feared, the boss who controlled Milano with an iron fist, the man whose decisions meant life or death. And then one night, under a pounding rain that seemed determined to wash away all the sins of the city, he found her outside the gates of his villa, on her knees on the wet pavement, crying like the world had ended, and maybe hers had. When he pulled her inside, something in the universe shifted. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places, from the most dangerous hands, from a heart everyone believes is made of stone. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Comment where you're listening from. And if you feel it was really worth it, consider becoming a member to get early access to upcoming stories. Your support makes all the difference. The rain had started at sunset, one of those autumn storms that turns Milano into a blur of gray and silver. Inside the villa, Dante stood in his study, a room that smelled of old leather and expensive whiskey, surrounded by walls lined with books he'd read and contracts he'd signed. The floor-to-ceiling windows showed nothing but darkness and streaks of water, the city lights somewhere beyond the rain. He held a glass of scotch, barely touched, staring at nothing in particular. This was his life now. Power without purpose, wealth without warmth, control without connection. He was 42 years old and ruled an empire built on fear and loyalty, purchased with blood and money. The Caruso family had controlled the northern territories for 3 generations. His grandfather had started with protection rackets and gambling. His father had expanded into construction, legitimate businesses that laundered money so clean it sparkled. And Dante had turned it into something approaching corporate, a machine that ran with brutal efficiency. But machines don't feel. And lately, Dante had been wondering if he'd forgotten how. He was tall, 6'3", with the kind of build that came from discipline rather than vanity. Dark hair threaded with silver at the temples, sharp features that could be handsome or terrifying depending on his mood, and eyes the color of storm clouds, gray and unreadable. He wore his power like other men wore cologne, an invisible but unmistakable presence. Women found him attractive. He knew this in the abstract way. You know facts. They approached him at galas, at clubs, offering themselves with practiced smiles. He'd accepted those offers occasionally over the years, transactions as cold as the business deals he made during daylight physical release without emotional risk. It was safer that way. Because Dante had learned early that in his world, caring about someone made them a target. Love was a weakness that enemies exploited, so he'd buried that capacity somewhere deep, convinced himself he didn't need it, that he was better off alone at the top of his mountain of money and menace. The intercom on his desk buzzed. His head of security, Marco. "Boss, there's someone at the gate." Dante didn't look away from the window. "Tell them to leave." "It's a woman. She's just sitting there in the rain." "Then call the police. Not my problem." There was a pause, unusual for Marco, who never hesitated. "Boss, I think you should look at the camera feed." Something in Marco's tone made Dante set down his glass and move to the desk, where multiple monitors showed security footage from around the property. He tapped the screen showing the main gate. And there she was, a woman, maybe late 20s, on her knees on the wet ground just outside the iron gates. Her clothes were soaked through, her hair plastered to her face and shoulders. She wasn't trying to get in, wasn't calling for help, wasn't doing anything but crying. Her whole body shook with sobs that Dante couldn't hear, but could see in the violent shuddering of her shoulders. "How long has she been there?" Dante heard himself ask. 20 minutes. She walked up, got to the gate, and just collapsed. She hasn't moved since. Dante stared at the screen. He should let Marco handle it. Should stay in his warm study with his cold scotch and his carefully maintained isolation. This wasn't his concern. Women cried in rain all over the city every night. But something about the complete surrender in her posture, the way she'd chosen this spot, his gate specifically, to fall apart made him pause. "I'm going down," he said, already moving toward the door. "Boss, it could be a setup. Could be someone trying to... Then you and the men stay alert. But I'm going down." He took his jacket from the back of his chair, a concession to the rain rather than the cold. The villa was a restored 18th century palazzo, all marble floors and frescoed ceilings, and the kind of elegance that money could buy, but not create. It had belonged to old Italian nobility before the family fell on hard times and sold it to the highest bidder. Dante had gutted and rebuilt the interior to his specifications, modern security hidden behind historical beauty. He walked through hallways lined with art he'd acquired, not because he loved it, but because it was expected of men in his position. Past rooms he barely used, spaces that echoed with emptiness, despite being full of expensive things. The rain hit him the moment he stepped outside, cold and sharp. His shoes, handmade leather that cost more than most people made in a month, squelched in puddles as he walked down the long driveway toward the gate. His security stayed back, but visible, shadows with guns watching for threats. The woman didn't notice his approach. She was still on her knees, still crying, her hands pressed flat against the wet pavement, as if she were trying to hold herself to the earth. As he got closer, Dante could see details. She wore what had once been nice clothes, a gray dress and jacket that were now ruined by rain and mud. No shoes. He noticed that with a strange jolt. Her feet were bare and bleeding, small cuts visible even in the dim light from the security lamps. Her hair was dark, he thought, though it was hard to tell soaked as it was. And she was thin. Too thin. The kind of thin that comes from not eating rather than vanity. "Signorina," his voice cut through the rain. She flinched, but didn't look up. "You need to leave. This is private property." Still nothing. Dante came closer, standing now just on the other side of the gate. "Can you hear me? You can't stay here." Finally, slowly, she raised her head, and Dante felt something crack in his chest, a sensation so foreign he almost didn't recognize it. Her face was bruised, a dark purple bloom across her left cheekbone, her lips split and swollen. But it was her eyes that stopped him. Brown eyes that should have been warm, but were completely empty, looking at him without really seeing him, looking through him to something beyond. Eyes that had given up. "Please," she whispered, so quiet he almost missed it under the rain. "Please, just let me stay here. I won't bother you. I just can't go back. I can't." Her voice broke on the last word. Dante should have called the police then. Should have had Marco escort her to a hospital or a shelter or anywhere that wasn't his property. But instead, he found himself pulling keys from his pocket, unlocking the gate, the metal groaning as it swung open. "Get up," he said, not unkindly, but not gently either. She shook her head, fresh tears mixing with rain. I can't move." So Dante did something he hadn't done in 20 years, something that went against every instinct of self-preservation and emotional distance he'd carefully cultivated. He bent down and picked her up. She weighed almost nothing in his arms, bones and soaked clothes and shivering skin. She didn't resist, didn't cling to him either, Just let herself be lifted like a broken doll. "Marco!" Dante called over his shoulder as he carried her back toward the villa. "Get Dr. Russo here, now. And find some women's clothes, I don't care how, just do it." He felt her head rest against his chest. Whether from exhaustion or surrender, he didn't know. By the time they reached the villa entrance, she'd stopped crying but was shaking violently. Shock and cold working together. Dante carried her through the grand entrance hall with its marble columns and crystal chandelier, up the sweeping staircase to the second floor, past the wing where his bedroom and office were located, to the guest wing that hadn't seen an actual guest in years. He shouldered open the door to the largest guest room, a space decorated in soft creams and golds, with a 4-poster bed and windows overlooking the garden. The attached bathroom was pure luxury, marble and gold fixtures, and a tub large enough for 3 people. "I'm going to put you down now," Dante said, surprised by how gentle his voice had become. He set her carefully on the edge of the bathtub, and she sat there limply, staring at nothing. He turned on the water, adjusting it to warm but not hot. She was too cold for hot water. It could shock her system. Steam began to rise, filling the bathroom with soft white clouds. "You need to get out of those wet clothes," Dante said, then realized how that sounded. "I'll leave you. Can you manage on your own?" She didn't respond, didn't move. Dante ran a hand through his wet hair, water dripping down his neck. He was completely out of his depth here. He could negotiate €1,000,000 deals, could stare down men twice his size, could make decisions that affected hundreds of lives. But this broken woman in his bathroom, he didn't know how to handle. "What's your name?" he tried. A long pause, then barely audible. "Sophia. Sophia. I'm Dante. You're safe here. No one is going to hurt you. But you need to get warm, or you'll get hypothermia. Can you do that? Can you undress and get in the bath?" Another long pause, then the smallest nod. "I'll be right outside. The doctor's coming. If you need anything, just call." He left the bathroom, closing the door behind him, and stood in the bedroom, feeling strangely helpless. Through the door, he heard the soft sounds of movement, clothes hitting the floor, water sloshing as she presumably got into the tub. He should leave, give her complete privacy. Instead, he found himself standing guard, listening for sounds of distress. Marco appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. "Russo is 15 minutes out, and Maria is bringing clothes from her daughter's closet, said they should fit." Maria was the housekeeper who came 3 times a week, a woman in her 60s who'd worked for Dante's father before him. "Good. Postmen at all entrances. I want to know if anyone comes within 100 meters of this property." "Boss, who is she?" "I don't know, but she's been hurt. Badly. And until I understand the situation, she stays under this roof and under protection." Marco nodded and left. Dante waited, counting minutes. After 20 minutes with no sound from the bathroom, he knocked softly. "Sophia, are you all right?" Silence. His chest tightened with an unfamiliar anxiety. "I'm coming in. If you're decent, say something." Nothing. Dante opened the door. She was still in the bath, knees drawn up to her chest, arms wrapped around them, staring at the water. The bathroom was thick with steam. He could see bruises on her shoulders, her back, marks that made his jaw clench with rage at whoever had done this. Sophia. She blinked slowly, turning her head toward him. "The water's getting cold," she said in that same hollow voice. "Let's get you out then." He grabbed one of the huge white towels from the warmer and held it out, turning his back to give her privacy. He heard water moving, her careful steps out of the tub. "I'm decent." He turned. She'd wrapped the towel around herself, her hair dripping onto her shoulders. In the bright bathroom light, he could see more damage. Bruises in various stages of healing. Yellowing ones on her arms, fresh purple ones on her ribs. Whoever had done this had been at it for a while. Dr. Russo arrived, a man in his late 50s who'd been patching up Caruso family members and associates for decades. He asked no questions, just examined Sophia with professional efficiency, while Dante waited outside. When he emerged, his face was grave. Multiple contusions, some broken ribs that are healing incorrectly, malnutrition, dehydration, signs of sustained physical abuse over months. I've given her something for pain and something to help her sleep. She needs rest, proper nutrition, and honestly, psychological help. What she's been through, it's not just physical. Will she be all right? Dante found himself asking. Physically, yes, with time. Mentally? Russo shook his head. That's not my area. But she's traumatized, Dante. Deeply. Whoever did this broke more than her bones. After Russo left, Dante returned to the guest room. Sophia was in the bed now, wearing clothes Maria had brought, soft pajamas that hung on her thin frame. The sleep medication was clearly working, her eyes heavy-lidded. "Thank you," she whispered, "for bringing me inside, for not sending me away." "Who did this to you?" Dante asked, sitting in the chair beside the bed, maintaining distance, but near enough to hear her. "My husband." The words were bitter, exhausted. "Ex-husband," I thought. "I left him 6 months ago, ran away to my sister's in Torino, but he found me, always finds me. And tonight? Tonight he came to my sister's apartment. She wasn't home. He broke down the door, told me I belonged to him, that I could never leave, that he'd kill me before he let me go." She closed her eyes, tears leaking from the corners. I jumped from the balcony, 2nd floor, that's how I hurt my feet, and I ran. I ran through the city in the rain, no shoes, no phone, no money. I just ran until I couldn't anymore, and I ended up at your gate. "Why my gate specifically?" She shook her head slightly. "I don't know, I didn't plan it. I just collapsed there. I thought maybe if I stayed in the rain long enough, it would all stop hurting." The casual mention of wanting to die, said so plainly, sent ice through Dante's veins. "What's your husband's name?" "Ex-husband." "Alessandro Vitale." Dante knew the name. Not personally, but the Vitales were a minor family in the organization. Legitimate businesses mostly. Real estate development. Alessandro ran the Torino operations. "You know him?" Sophia said, reading his expression. "Of course you do. Everyone in your world knows everyone. It's not my world anymore. Not for you. You're under my protection now." Her eyes opened, studying him with that hollow gaze. "Why would you do that?" "You don't know me. I'm nobody." "Because no one deserves what was done to you. And because he needs to understand there are consequences." Sophia's eyes filled with tears again. "You don't understand. He'll come for me. He always does. He has men, he has resources. I've tried leaving 4 times. 4 times. He always finds me, always brings me back. And it gets worse every time I try. He won't this time." "How can you possibly know that?" For the first time since finding her, Dante allowed himself a small, cold smile. "Because I'm Dante Caruso, and when I say someone is under my protection, that word travels. Your ex-husband will get a message tomorrow, and he'll understand what it means." She stared at him for a long moment. Then her eyes began to close, the medication pulling her under. "Why?" she murmured, half asleep already. "Why are you helping me?" Dante didn't have an answer to that question, not one that made sense even to himself. So he just said, "Sleep now? You're safe." And for the first time in what must have been months or years, Sophia closed her eyes without fear. Dante left her sleeping and returned to his study. But this time, the familiar comfort of that room felt different, contaminated somehow by the knowledge of what existed in the world, what men did to women who trusted them. He'd never been naive about violence. His life was built on it, controlled applications of force to maintain power and order. But this was different. This was sustained cruelty, breaking someone slowly, systematically, for the pleasure of control. It made him sick in a way business violence never had. He picked up his phone and called Marco. "I need everything on Alessandro Vitale. Everything. Business, personal, associates, where he lives, where he eats, where he fucks. I want to know what he's afraid of." By morning. "Understood, boss." Next, he called Luca, his consigliere, the man who'd been with him since they were teenagers running small schemes in the streets. "We have a situation, a woman, Sofia Vitale. She's claimed sanctuary here. Her ex-husband is Alessandro Vitale, Torino real estate. He's been beating her, stalking her. She's under our protection as of now." Luca was quiet for a moment, then said carefully, "Boss, taking in someone's wife, ex or not, that's going to create complications." "I know. Alessandro might see it as provocation, as interference in family business." "Good. Let him see it that way. Let him understand whose territory he's stepping into when he comes to Milano looking for her. And if he pushes back, then we push harder. I'm done with men who think they can hurt women without consequence." There was another pause. Luca had known Dante long enough to hear what wasn't being said, to recognize when something had shifted. "All right. I'll put the word out through appropriate channels. By noon tomorrow, every connected family in northern Italy will know Sofia Vitale is under Caruso protection." After hanging up, Dante poured himself another scotch, this time drinking it. The rain had stopped, leaving the city washed clean and quiet. He should go to bed. It was past 2 in the morning. But instead, he found himself walking back upstairs to the guest wing. Just checking, he told himself. Just making sure she was all right. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. Inside, Sofia slept, curled on her side, the blankets pulled up to her chin. In sleep, with her face relaxed, he could see what she might look like without the bruises and the terror. Beautiful, he realized with a strange jolt, not in the polished, calculated way of the women who usually orbited his world, but in a natural, unguarded way. Even damaged and exhausted, there was something compelling about her. Dante stood in the doorway watching her sleep. This broken stranger who'd collapsed at his gate and somehow cracked open something in his chest he'd thought sealed forever. He posted one of his most trusted men, Giuseppe, outside her door. "No one enters without my approval. No one. She stays safe." "Yes, boss." The next morning, Dante woke at 6, as always, his internal clock precise, despite only 3 hours of sleep. He went through his usual routine, workout in the private gym, shower, the ritual of dressing in clothes tailored specifically to his frame. But his mind was elsewhere, wondering if she was awake yet, if she'd slept through the night, if she'd try to leave. By 8, he had reports on his desk. Marco had worked through the night, and the picture of Alessandro Vitale that emerged was ugly. Multiple police reports filed by Sofia over the years, all dismissed or dropped when she changed her mind, which Dante knew meant she'd been threatened or beaten into silence. Restraining orders issued and violated, a pattern of escalation over their 5-year marriage. Alessandro had money and family connections that had protected him, made Sofia's complaints disappear into bureaucratic mazes. There were also financial records showing Alessandro's business was struggling, real estate developments gone wrong, debt piling up. Men like that, losing control in one area of life, often tried to assert it more violently in others. Sofia had been his outlet, his victim, his thing to control when everything else was slipping away. Dante's phone rang. "Luca." Words traveled fast. "Alessandro knows. He called one of our people in Torino an hour ago, demanding we hand over his wife, claiming right of family business." And? Our person told him to fuck himself in more diplomatic terms, but the message was clear. Sofia stays where she is. How did Alessandro react? Threatened to come to Milano personally. Said no one takes what belongs to him. The usual posturing. Let him come. I'd like to meet him. There was dark promise in Dante's voice. Around noon, there was a soft knock on his study door. Come in. It was Maria, the housekeeper. Signor Caruso, the girl is awake. She's asking for you. Dante set down his pen. How does she seem? Frightened. Confused. But better than last night. I made her breakfast. She ate a little. He found Sofia sitting on the edge of the bed, dressed in clothes Maria had provided, jeans and a soft sweater, both too big. Her hair was clean and pulled back in a simple ponytail. In daylight, the bruises looked worse, vivid purple and yellow against pale skin. She stood when he entered, wincing at the movement. Please, sit. How are you feeling? Sore, confused. I keep thinking I'll wake up and this will have been a dream. She looked around the room. This is real, right? Last night happened. It happened. You're in my home. You're safe. She studied him, really looked at him for the first time. You're Dante Caruso. The Dante Caruso. I didn't realize last night. I wasn't thinking clearly. But this morning Maria told me and She stopped, fear creeping into her expression. You know what that means then. You know what kind of man I am. I know what people say you are. And you're not afraid? Sofia laughed, a broken sound. I'm terrified, but not of you. You saved me. You brought me inside when you could have left me in the rain. Whatever else you are, you did that. Dante moved to the window, hands in his pockets, careful to maintain distance so she wouldn't feel threatened. I spoke with my people this morning. Your ex-husband knows you're here. He's made demands that we return you. She went very still, very pale. What did you tell him? That you're under my protection, that he has no claim here, that if he wants to discuss it, he can come to Milano and face me directly. No. Sofia stood quickly, swaying, catching herself on the bedpost. No, you don't understand. He'll come, and he'll be violent. He'll try to hurt you to get to me, or he'll wait and catch me when I leave, and it'll be worse, so much worse because I embarrassed him. Sofia, sit down before you fall down. He moved toward her instinctively, steadying her with a hand on her arm. Even through the sweater, he could feel how thin she was, bones too close to the surface. She looked up at him, tears starting. Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything. Let me go. I'll disappear. I'll go somewhere he'll never find me. There is nowhere he won't find you. Men like him don't stop. You know that. You've tried running 4 times. Sofia sank back onto the bed, covering her face with her hands. Then what's the point? If he'll always find me, if it never ends, then what's the point of any of this? Dante sat in the chair across from her, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. The point is that this time you're not alone. This time you have resources, protection, people who won't let him take you. But why? That's what I don't understand. Men like, you don't do things from kindness. There's always a price. So what's the price? What do you want from me? It was a fair question, one Dante had been asking himself since last night. I don't want anything from you, but I do want something because of you. I want Alessandro Vitale to understand that there are consequences to his actions, that he can't terrorize women without answer. Call it principle, call it ego, call it whatever you want. But you stay here, safe, until this is resolved. And then? Then you're free to go wherever you want. I'll help you relocate. New identity if needed. Money to start over. But on your terms this time, not running in fear. She dropped her hands, looking at him with those wounded eyes. No one has ever offered me that before. Safety with no strings. Then you've known the wrong people. They sat in silence for a moment, the morning sun streaming through the windows, dust motes dancing in the light. Sophia finally spoke, her voice small but trying for strength. If I stay, even temporarily, I should tell you what you're dealing with, who Alessandro really is. Tell me. And she did. The story came out haltingly at first, then faster, like poison being drawn from a wound they'd met when she was 22, working at a gallery in Torino. He'd been charming, attentive, successful. The courtship had been intense, overwhelming in the best way. He'd made her feel special, chosen, loved. The wedding had been elaborate, his family's money displayed proudly. The problems started on their honeymoon, small criticisms about her clothes, her makeup, how she talked to waiters. She'd thought he was just particular, that she could adjust, make him happy. But the criticisms grew. She wasn't thin enough, wasn't quiet enough, wasn't grateful enough. The first time he hit her was 6 months into the marriage, a slap across the face when she'd contradicted him at a dinner party. He'd cried afterward, apologized, sworn it would never happen again. It happened again 3 days later. The pattern established itself quickly. Abuse followed by apology, gifts, promises, then tension building until the next explosion. Sophia's family lived in Sicily. She'd moved north for work and had lost touch with most of them. Her friends gradually disappeared, driven away by Alessandro's possessiveness or by Sophia's growing shame at what her life had become. She was isolated, financially dependent, and trapped. I tried leaving the first time after 2 years. I took money from our joint account and got a hotel room. He found me in 6 hours, dragged me back to the apartment and broke my arm in 3 places. Told me if I ever tried again, he'd kill my sister. Sophia's voice was flat now, reciting facts without emotion, because emotion would break her. The second time, I waited until he was traveling for business, got on a train to Venezia. Lasted 2 days before he showed up at the hostel where I was staying. The third time, I tried going to the police first. They took a report, told me to come back if I had evidence. I went home and he was waiting. That beating put me in the hospital. And the fourth time, I planned better. Saved cash over months. Didn't tell anyone, including my sister. Got to her apartment in Torino and made her promise not to tell him. 6 months, Dante. I had 6 months of peace. I started working again, part-time at a bookstore. Started feeling like maybe I could have a life. And then last night, Dante's hands had curled into fists during her story, rage simmering in his chest. Not the cold business rage he was used to, but something hotter, more personal. He will not touch you again. I promise you that. You can't promise that. He's connected. He has resources. Not like mine. Sophia, do you understand who I am? Really understand? She nodded slowly. You're the head of the Caruso family. You control most of northern Italy's organized interests. You're one of the most powerful men in the country. Then believe me when I say Alessandro Vitale is nothing compared to what I can bring to bear. He's a small fish who's gotten away with monstrous things because no one cared enough to stop him. I care, and I will stop him. For the first time, something like hope flickered in Sophia's eyes. Why do you care? You still haven't really answered that. Dante stood, moving back to the window. Why did he care? It wasn't just principle, though that was part of it. It wasn't just business, though making an example of Alessandro sent useful messages. It was something else, something he didn't quite want to examine too closely. Because last night I saw someone who'd given up, who was ready to let the rain wash them away. And I thought, what kind of world am I maintaining? What kind of order am I enforcing, if it allows that? If it lets men like Alessandro break women like you without consequence? He turned to face her. I've done terrible things, Sophia. I'm not a good man by most measures. But I've never hurt someone weaker than me for pleasure. I've never made someone I claimed to love fear me. There are lines even men like me don't cross. Sophia's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. Thank you. For seeing me. For not looking away. You should rest more. Heal. Maria will bring you lunch. If you need anything, there's a phone by the bed. Dial 0 and someone will help you. Can I ask you something? Anything. Will you come back? Later, I mean. Everyone here is kind. But I don't know them. I don't know anyone. And you're the only thing between me and him. And I'm scared that if you're not here, I'll wake up and he'll have found a way in and... She was spiraling into panic, breathing getting quick and shallow. Dante crossed the room and did something he never did. Offered comfort without calculation. He sat beside her on the bed and took her hand. Careful. Gentle. Breathe with me. Slow. In through your nose, out through your mouth. That's it. Sophia followed his rhythm, her breathing gradually calming. I'll come back this evening. We'll have dinner together if you're feeling up to it. And there are guards outside your door, outside the house. No one is getting in. You're safe. I need you to believe that. She nodded, still holding his hand. I'm trying to believe it. It's just hard. Safety hasn't been real for so long. Make it real. You're in my home, under my protection. The world outside might be dangerous, but these walls, they're secure rest now. He gently extracted his hand and stood, and Sophia lay back on the bed, exhaustion pulling at her, despite it being barely afternoon. Dante spent the afternoon in meetings, dealing with the usual business of running an organization that spanned legitimate and illegitimate enterprises, construction contracts, shipping routes, political payoffs, territory negotiations. The machinery of power that required constant attention, but his mind kept drifting upstairs, to the woman sleeping in his guest room, to the unexpected weight of responsibility he'd taken on. At 4, Luca arrived at the villa for their scheduled meeting. They sat in the study, coffee and papers spread across the desk. Alessandro is making noise, Luca reported. Called in favors, talked to intermediaries, trying to find an angle to pressure us, but no one's willing to go against you on this. The consensus is he brought it on himself. The domestic issues aren't worth starting conflicts over. Good. However, our contacts in Torino say he's getting desperate. His business is worse off than we thought. Loans coming due, partners pulling out. And now his pride is wounded. Dangerous combination. Is he going to do something stupid? I'd bet on it. He's too ego-driven to let this go. Question is what and when. Dante nodded, having expected as much. Men like Alessandro, when backed into corners, lashed out. Double the security. I want eyes everywhere. And put surveillance on Alessandro. I want to know his movements in real time. After Luca left, Dante found himself thinking about Sophia's question. Why was he doing this? The truth, the uncomfortable truth, was that something about her spoke to a loneliness he'd carried so long he'd forgotten it was there. He understood what it meant to be surrounded by people, but utterly alone. His isolation was self-imposed, a necessary armor in his line of work. Hers had been forced on her, weaponized by someone who should have protected her. But the result was the same, that hollow feeling of no one truly seeing you. When he'd looked into her eyes in the rain, he'd seen his own loneliness reflected back, and maybe, in some broken way, they recognized each other. Two people who'd learned that the world was cruel, that safety was illusion, that trust was dangerous, except he'd responded by becoming dangerous himself, and she'd responded by trying to disappear. Neither strategy had led to happiness. At 7, Dante had Maria prepare dinner. Nothing heavy. Sophia's system couldn't handle rich food yet. Simple pasta, grilled vegetables, fresh bread. He had it set up in the small dining room adjacent to the guest wing, intimate rather than the formal dining hall that could seat 30. He knocked softly on Sophia's door. "Come in." She was sitting in the window seat, looking out at the garden. She'd changed into another outfit Maria had provided, soft gray pants and a cream sweater. With her hair down and some color back in her face from rest and food, she looked less like a ghost. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Sore still, but better. Your housekeeper has been wonderful. She brought me books and tea and didn't ask questions. Maria has seen a lot in her years working for my family. She knows when discretion is needed. I read for a while, got lost in someone else's story. It helped." Sophia turned from the window. "You didn't have to come. I'm sure you're busy. I promised I would, and I thought you might like company for dinner. But if you'd prefer to be alone—" "No." The word came quick, almost desperate. "No, please. Company would be good. Being alone with my thoughts isn't great right now." They walked to the small dining room, and Dante pulled out her chair, an old-fashioned gesture that made Sophia smile slightly. Chivalry from a mafia boss. The world is full of contradictions. "I prefer the term businessman. Is that what you prefer to be called?" She asked it carefully, testing boundaries. "I prefer to be called Dante. What's on your birth certificate is just a formality." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, Sophia picking at her food, but managing more than Dante expected. He found himself watching her, the way she moved carefully to avoid aggravating her ribs, the way she startled slightly at unexpected sounds, hypervigilance learned from years of walking on eggshells. "Can I ask you something personal?" Sophia said eventually. "It's only fair. You know everything about me now. Ask. Why don't you have a wife, a girlfriend, family? This huge house and you live here alone?" Dante considered how much truth to offer. "Because relationships are vulnerabilities in my line of work. People you care about become targets. It's easier to be alone." "Easier, but not happier." "No, not happier, but safe." "Is that worth it? Safety at the cost of connection?" "I used to think so. Now I'm not sure." He met her eyes. "What about you? Will you ever trust someone again after Alessandro?" Sophia looked down at her plate. "I don't know. Part of me thinks I'm too broken now, that he damaged something fundamental, and I'll never be able to let someone close without fear. But another part of me, a small, stubborn part, wants to believe that not all men are like him. That somewhere there's someone who would treat me with kindness, who would see me as a person rather than property. That's not hope, Sophia. That's truth. Not all men are like him. Most aren't. Were you ever in love before you decided it was too dangerous?" The question caught Dante off guard. No one asked him personal things. No one dared. Once, a long time ago. I was 20. She was 19. She worked at a cafe my father liked. Smart, beautiful, kind. We kept it secret because I knew my father wouldn't approve. She wasn't from our world. What happened? My father found out, had his men warn her away. Told her exactly what dating me would mean. The danger, the compromises, the darkness. She left the city the next day. I never saw her again. He'd never told anyone that story. And you didn't go after her? I did. Got as far as the train station. Then I realized my father was right. Being with me would have destroyed her eventually, one way or another. So I let her go. Learned the lesson he wanted me to learn. Sophia reached across the table, her hand hovering near his, not quite touching. That's incredibly sad. It's practical. Emotions make you weak in this life, or they make you human. She withdrew her hand. Sorry, I shouldn't presume to— No, you're right. That's what they make you. Human. I just decided a long time ago that being human was a luxury I couldn't afford. They finished dinner, talking about safer things, books they'd read, places they'd traveled, the small details of life that felt both ordinary and precious. Dante found himself relaxing in a way he couldn't remember doing before, not performing, not calculating, just existing in the moment with someone who asked for nothing more than company. The days developed a rhythm. Dante would check on Sophia each morning, sometimes joining her for coffee on the terrace when weather permitted. He'd handle business through the day, always with part of his attention on the updates about Alessandro's movements. Then evenings, he'd return to have dinner with her, conversations that grew longer and more comfortable as she healed and began to trust Sophia was smart, he discovered. Sharp and observant with a quiet humor that emerged as she felt safer. She'd studied art history in university before financial pressures made her drop out and work. She loved reading, classical music, gardens, small beautiful things that Alessandro had systematically denied her, claiming they were wastes of time and money. Dante found himself wanting to give her those things back. He had Maria order books from the city's best bookstores, had the gardener bring flowers to her room daily, had his driver take her to galleries when she felt strong enough for outings, always with security but discreet. Watching her come back to life, watching color return to her cheeks and light to her eyes, satisfied something in Dante he hadn't known needed satisfying. But Alessandro remained a hovering threat. Reports came in daily. He was drinking heavily, making reckless statements, pushing his family connections to intercede. None of it worked. The Vitales were small players, and no one was willing to challenge Dante over this, which meant Alessandro was getting more desperate. On the 8th day of Sophia's stay, Dante was in his study when Marco appeared, face grim. "We have a problem. Alessandro just showed up in Milano, booked a room at the Principe. He's alone, no security detail we can identify. He's here to make a play. That's what I'm thinking. Question is what kind. Keep full surveillance. I want to know everyone he talks to, everywhere he goes. And increase security here, triple shifts if needed." That evening at dinner, Dante debated whether to tell Sophia she'd been doing so much better, smiling more, the haunted look fading. But she deserved to know. "Alessandro is in Milano," he said without preamble. The color drained from Sophia's face, her fork clattering to her plate. "When?" "He arrived this afternoon. My people are watching him." "He's here for me. He's going to try something." Her breathing was speeding up, panic rising. Dante moved his chair closer, taking her hands. "Look at me. Sophia, look at me. He can't get to you. Security here is impenetrable. He'd need an army to breach these walls, and he has none of that. You are safe. You don't know him. He's clever when he wants to be. He'll find a way. He'll pose as someone else, or bribe one of your people, or wait until I leave the grounds. You won't leave the grounds until he's handled, and my people can't be bribed. They're loyal to me, not money. Sophia, breathe. I've got this." She looked at him with wide, frightened eyes, but gradually her breathing slowed. "I'm sorry. I know I should trust you. I do trust you. But fear isn't rational. It's 5 years of conditioning that when he comes for me, I end up hurt. Not this time." Dante kept hold of her hands, thumbs stroking gently over her knuckles. "I promise you, not this time." They stayed like that for a long moment, hands joined, and Dante realized with a start that he couldn't remember the last time he'd touched someone with gentleness, with care, with no ulterior motive. It felt strange and necessary all at once. "Will you stay with me tonight?" Sophia asked quietly. "Just in the room, I don't mean. I'm not asking for anything inappropriate, but I don't think I can sleep knowing he's in the same city. And you make me feel safe." It was wildly inappropriate, Every protocol of host and guest and propriety said he should refuse, but Dante found himself nodding. "I'll stay. Let me get some work, and I'll set up in the chair. You rest." He spent the evening in the armchair by the window, laptop balanced, doing work while Sophia lay in bed reading. It was strangely domestic, companionable. Two people sharing space without needing to fill it with words. Around midnight, Sophia's breathing evened into sleep. Book still open on her chest. Dante carefully removed it, marked the page, set it on the nightstand. She looked peaceful in sleep, younger, the lines of stress smoothed away. He should leave now, go to his own room. Instead, he stayed, watching over her like some self-appointed guardian. And if he admitted to himself that she'd become important to him, that her smile had started mattering more than it should, that he looked forward to their dinners with anticipation he usually reserved for successful business ventures, well, that was a problem for another day. Sophia woke around 3, confused to find him still there. "You stayed." "I said I would." "But you have work. You must be exhausted." "I'm fine. Go back to sleep." She looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression, then settled back into the pillows. "Dante, thank you. For everything. I know I say it a lot, but I don't think you understand how much this means. You gave me back my life. You gave me something too," he found himself admitting in the darkness. "What could I possibly have given you? Purpose. Reason to be more than just the machine I've made myself into. Reminder that there are things worth protecting beyond money and power." That's a heavy burden to put on me. "It's not a burden, it's a gift." Dante stood, stretching muscles stiff from hours in the chair. "Sleep now. I'll be downstairs if you need anything. Giuseppe is right outside your door. Will you come back tomorrow? For dinner? Every night until you tell me to stop." Sophia smiled, small but genuine. "Then I guess you'll be here a while?" He left her then, returning to his own quarters. But sleep eluded him. He stood in his room staring out at the garden, where first light was beginning to gray the sky, thinking about how one broken woman in the rain had somehow rearranged his entire world. The next day, the situation with Alessandro escalated. He showed up at one of the Caruso family's legitimate businesses, a construction company, demanding to speak with Dante. Security turned him away, but not before he'd caused a scene, shouting threats, drawing attention. "He's trying to force your hand," Luca said during their afternoon meeting. "Make enough noise that you have to respond publicly." "Then let's give him a response." Dante's voice was cold, controlled. "Set up a meeting, neutral location. Tell him I'll discuss his concerns face to face." "Boss, that's exactly what he wants. He's probably planning." "I know what he's planning, and we'll be ready. But this ends now, one way or another. Sophia can't heal properly with this threat hanging over her. She needs closure." Lucas studied him carefully. "You care about her, more than just protecting someone in need. Does it matter?" "It matters because it changes your calculation, makes you potentially reckless." "I'm not being reckless. I'm being decisive. Set up the meeting for tomorrow night. Industrial District, Warehouse 12. Our territory, our control, but neutral enough he'll come." After Luca left, Dante sat alone with his thoughts. Luca was right. He did care about Sophia, more than was wise, more than he'd intended. She'd slipped past defenses he'd spent decades building, and now her well-being was tangled up with his own in ways he couldn't unravel. But caring about her didn't make him reckless. If anything, it made him more dangerous, because he would do whatever necessary to ensure she could live without fear. That evening, he told Sophia about the meeting. "I'm meeting with Alessandro tomorrow night." "No." Her response was immediate, panicked. "No, Dante, that's exactly what he wants. He'll try to hurt you or trap you, or... He'll try, he'll fail. Sophia, this has to end. You can't live looking over your shoulder forever. I can, if it means you're safe. I won't have you hurt because of me. The fierceness in her voice startled him. She stepped closer, hands gripping his arms. You've already done so much, more than anyone ever has. But don't risk yourself for me. I'm not worth that. Yes, you are. Dante took her face in his hands, the gesture becoming familiar now. You're worth everything, Sophia, and I'm not going to let him hurt you anymore. Not from fear, not from distance, not ever. This ends tomorrow. Tears spilled over her cheeks. I can't lose you. I've only just found you. The confession hung between them. Words that meant more than either was ready to acknowledge. Dante's thumb brushed away her tears, and he realized with crystal clarity that he'd passed some point of no return. This wasn't just about protection anymore. Somewhere in the late-night conversations and shared dinners and moments of vulnerability, he'd fallen for this broken, brave woman who'd stumbled into his life. You won't lose me, he said softly. I promise. You can't promise that. Watch me. He leaned down, slowly enough that she could pull away, and kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. I've never failed at anything I've truly committed to. I'm not starting now. The next day moved with inevitable momentum toward evening. Dante prepared carefully, not with weapons, though those would be present, but with strategy. Alessandro would come expecting intimidation, or violence, or negotiation. What he'd get was justice. At 8, Dante arrived at Warehouse 12 with Marco and 4 of his most trusted men. The space was empty, cavernous, lit by harsh industrial lights. Good sight lines, multiple exits, their vehicles positioned for quick departure if needed. Alessandro arrived 15 minutes late, a petty power play. He came with 3 men, all looking uncomfortable, clearly aware they were outmatched. Alessandro himself was shorter than Dante expected, maybe 5'10", with the kind of build that had once been athletic, but was running to softness. Good looks marred by cruelty in the eyes and a weak mouth. Caruso. Alessandro tried for confident, but landed on aggressive. You have something that belongs to me. I have a guest who's claimed sanctuary, not the same thing. Sophia is my wife. You have no right to keep her. Ex-wife, according to the divorce papers she filed 2 years ago that your lawyers have been stalling. Dante had done his homework, and I have every right to offer protection to someone in need. Protection? From what? Her own imagination? Sophia is unstable, dramatic. She makes up stories. The medical records suggest otherwise. The photos of her injuries suggest otherwise. The police reports that mysteriously disappeared suggest otherwise. Dante's voice was cold steel. What you mean is that she's refused to be your punching bag anymore. Alessandro's face reddened. You don't know anything about our relationship, about what she did to deserve. There it is, Dante cut him off. What she did to deserve it. That's how men like you think, that there's some justification for breaking bones, for terrorizing someone who trusted you. But there's not. There's never a justification. So what? You're keeping her? Making her your whore? Is that what this is about? You want her so you're using your position to steal another man's property? The word property made something dark and violent uncoil in Dante's chest. He closed the distance between them in 3 steps, and Alessandro's men tensed, but didn't move, smart enough to know any action would be suicide. Sophia isn't property. She's a human being who deserves safety, respect, dignity, things you never gave her. And you did? In what, 2 weeks? You think you've saved her? That you're some kind of hero? Alessandro sneered. You're a criminal, Caruso. You're worse than me. At least I don't pretend to be anything other than what I am. You're right about one thing, I am a criminal. I've done terrible things to terrible people. But I've never raised a hand to someone weaker than me. Never beaten someone I claim to love. Never stalked someone who tried to escape my control. That makes me better than you in the ways that count. Dante stepped back, creating space. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign the divorce papers without contest. You're going to sell whatever assets are in both your names and give Sophia her half. And you're going to stay the fuck away from her for the rest of your life. And if I don't, then I destroy you, systematically. I pull every loan you have due. I make sure every business partner knows exactly what kind of man you are. I talk to police contacts about reopening investigations into your wife's injuries. I make your life a living hell until you're bankrupt and in prison or dead. Your choice. Alessandro's face went through several expressions, rage to fear to desperate calculation. You can't do all that over one woman. She's not worth it. To me, she is. And that's all that matters. Dante's voice was absolute, leaving no room for argument. You have 24 hours to decide, sign the papers or face the consequences. There won't be a third option. She'll never be happy with you. Alessandro played his last desperate card. She's broken, damaged. I made sure of that. She'll never trust anyone again, never open up, never be whole. You're stuck with damaged goods. The urge to physically hurt Alessandro was overwhelming, but Dante held himself in check. Violence would feel good, but wouldn't serve Sophia. If she's broken, you broke her. And unlike you, I have the patience to help her heal. Now get out of my sight, before I forget I'm trying to be civilized about this. Alessandro held his ground for another moment, then broke, turning and stalking out with his men. When the warehouse was empty, except for Dante and his people, Marco spoke. Think he'll sign? He'll sign he's a coward, and cowards always choose the path of least pain. But keep surveillance on him anyway. Men like that sometimes do stupid things when their ego is wounded. Dante returned to the villa to find Sophia pacing the guest room, looking up with relief when he entered. You're okay. You're not hurt. I'm fine. It went exactly as expected. And Alessandro? Agreed to sign the papers, give you your share of assets, stay away. It's over, Sophia. She stared at him for a long moment, then burst into tears. Not sad tears, relieved tears, the kind that come when a weight you've carried so long finally lifts. Dante held her as she cried. This strong woman who'd endured so much, finally allowing herself to believe she might be free. It's really over? She asked when she could speak. Really? He can't touch you anymore. You can go anywhere, do anything. You're free. Free. She tested the word like something foreign. I don't remember what that feels like. You'll remember. Give it time. They stood there in the middle of the room, holding each other, and Dante realized he didn't want her to leave. The thought of this house returning to its previous emptiness, of eating dinner alone, of having no one to talk to in the evenings, it felt unbearable. But he couldn't ask her to stay. She needed to find herself again, independent of any man, including him. Sophia pulled back slightly, looking up at him. What happens now? Now you heal. Take your time. Use the villa as long as you need. When you're ready, I'll help you figure out next steps. New apartment, job if you want one, whatever you need to build the life you want. And us? The question hung heavy. What about us? Is there an us? Or was this just you being a good person? And now that the problem is solved, we go back to our separate lives. Dante should say yes, that's exactly what it was. Should create distance, let her go. Not complicate her healing with his feelings. But he'd never been good at lying to himself. I don't want you to go, he admitted. These past 2 weeks, having you here, talking with you, watching you heal, it's been I've felt more human than I have in 20 years. But I also know you need independence, need to prove to yourself that you can stand on your own. So I won't ask you to stay. I'll help you leave when you're ready. But know that if you want to come back, the door is always open." Sophia's eyes filled with tears again. "What if I don't want to leave? What if being here, with you, is the first place I've felt safe in years? The first person I've trusted? Sophia, you're vulnerable right now. You might think you have feelings for me because I helped you. But that's gratitude, not don't." She put a hand over his mouth. "Don't tell me what I feel. I know the difference between gratitude and this. Yes, I'm grateful endlessly, but that's not why I look forward to dinner every night. That's not why I sleep better, knowing you're in the house. That's not why my heart beats faster when I hear your voice." Dante took her hand from his mouth, holding it. "You've been through trauma. Your judgment might be. My judgment is fine. Dante, for 5 years, Alessandro told me I was worthless, stupid, that my feelings weren't real, that I didn't know my own mind. Please don't do the same thing, even with good intentions. I know what I feel. And what do you feel? Scared, healing, hopeful, and falling for you, despite knowing all the reasons I shouldn't, despite knowing your life is complicated and dangerous, despite knowing I should probably spend a year in therapy before even thinking about another relationship. I'm falling for you anyway." The confession stripped him bare. Here was this woman who'd been broken and was choosing, consciously choosing, to risk her heart again. With him. How could he do anything but honor that courage? "I'm falling for you too," Dante said quietly. "Have been since I carried you in from the rain. Maybe before, maybe the moment I saw you on that monitor, something in me recognized something in you. But Sophia, I need you to understand what being with me means. I know what you do, who you are. It's more than that. It means accepting that I have enemies, that there's always risk. It means sometimes I can't tell you everything about my work. It means living with security, with caution, with the knowledge that normal isn't possible. Normal is overrated. Normal gave me Alessandro. I'll take complicated and honest over normal and abusive any day." "You should take time," Dante insisted, even as everything in him wanted to pull her closer. "Don't make decisions from vulnerability. Stay here, heal, find yourself again. If in a month, 3 months, 6 months, you still feel this way, then we'll talk about what it means." Sophia smiled, sad but understanding. "You're protecting me from myself. I'm protecting both of us from making mistakes we'll regret. You deserve certainty, Sophia. You deserve to choose me from strength, not need. And if I already am, if I already know, then waiting won't change anything, and we'll have the time to do this right." She nodded slowly, accepting his logic even if she didn't fully agree. "Okay, we'll take it slow. But Dante, I'm not leaving the villa. Not yet. Not until I'm ready. And we're still having dinner together. I'd be disappointed if we didn't." The next few weeks unfolded with careful balance. Sophia remained in the guest wing, but started participating more in the household. She helped Maria with the garden, planting flowers and herbs. She organized Dante's chaotic library, creating a system that actually made sense. She started painting again, something she hadn't done since before Alessandro, setting up an easel in the sunroom and losing hours to color and creation. Dante watched her bloom, literally watched her become more herself every day. The weight she'd lost started coming back, curves replacing sharp angles. The bruises faded to memories. The haunted look left her eyes, replaced by something lighter, freer. She laughed more, genuine laughter that filled the house with warmth it had never known. They maintained careful physical distance, no more hand-holding, No inappropriate touches, but the emotional intimacy deepened. Their dinners stretched longer, conversations ranging from philosophy to silly debates about movies. They started reading the same books and discussing them, started taking walks through the garden in the evening, started existing in a comfortable rhythm that felt like partnership. Alessandro signed the divorce papers without contest, caving completely to Dante's demands. The financial settlement gave Sofia enough money to live comfortably for years. She was legally, officially, free. "How does it feel?" Dante asked when the papers arrived. Sofia held the documents, proof of her liberation. "Like I can breathe for the first time in 5 years. Like the cage door finally opened. Like I get to choose what happens next." "And what do you choose?" "I'm still figuring that out. But I know what I don't choose. I don't choose to be afraid anymore. I don't choose to make myself small. I don't choose to accept less than I deserve." She looked at him meaningfully. "And I think I deserve you. You deserve better than me. Stop deciding what I deserve. That's for me to determine." She set down the papers and crossed the room to where he stood. "I know you're being noble, giving me space to heal. And I appreciate it. I do. But Dante, I've done the healing. I've done the thinking. I've spent 5 weeks in your home watching you, learning you, falling deeper every day. When are you going to stop pushing me away?" "I'm not pushing you away. I'm trying to do right by you." "Then do right by both of us. Stop pretending you don't feel this too." She took his hand, bold now, in ways she couldn't have been when she arrived. "I see you, Dante. The you behind the boss, behind the power, behind the walls. I see the man who reads poetry late at night, who tips Maria extra when he thinks no one is looking, who helped a broken stranger because it was right. I see you, and I'm not scared." I'm sure something in Dante's carefully maintained control cracked. "Sofia, kiss me. Not on the forehead like you're being careful. Really kiss me. Show me I'm not alone in this." He should still refuse, should maintain the distance, but he'd been fighting what he felt for weeks, and she was standing there offering him everything, brave and certain and beautiful. So he gave in. Dante cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, really kissed her, pouring weeks of restraint and longing into that connection. Sofia made a soft sound and kissed him back, hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. It wasn't desperate or rough. It was slow and thorough, a claiming and a promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sofia was smiling. See? The world didn't end. Not yet. But Dante was smiling too. "You're sure about this? About me?" "I've never been more sure of anything. I love you, Dante Caruso. Completely. Probably unwisely. But absolutely." He rested his forehead against hers. "I love you too. So much it terrifies me. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for you to realize what a mistake this is. The only mistake would be wasting the time we have. We've both spent enough of our lives alone, scared, convinced we didn't deserve connection. Let's stop doing that." So they did. They stopped fighting what they felt and started building what they could be together. Sofia officially moved from the guest wing into Dante's quarters, turning his cold, functional bedroom into a warm, shared space. She kept painting, started selling pieces through a gallery in the city under a pseudonym. She made the villa feel like a home instead of just a fortress. Dante found himself making space for her in every part of his life, taking her to business dinners, introducing her to associates, letting her see the full reality of his world. She didn't judge, didn't flinch from the truth of what he was. She just loved him through it. Months turned into a year. They developed rituals. Sunday mornings reading the paper together over coffee. Wednesday night movies in the private theater. walks through Milano on rare free afternoons when Dante could escape work. Sofia brought light and laughter into spaces that had only known business and tension. The men who worked for Dante noticed the change in him, how he smiled more, seemed less weighted. Even Luca commented that whatever Sofia was doing, it was working. "You're happier, boss. Lighter somehow. She makes me remember there's more to life than power and control. That's good. Everyone needs that person." But their happiness existed with constant awareness of the world Dante occupied. There were threats, always threats. Rival families testing boundaries, business deals that went wrong, the ever-present dance of violence and negotiation that defined his position. Sofia learned to live with security, with the fact that going out meant guards, that Dante's phone was never truly off, that plans could change in an instant based on situations she couldn't fully know about. She accepted it with remarkable grace, this strange half-life of luxury and danger. One evening, almost exactly a year after he'd found her in the rain, Dante came home later than usual, tension visible in his shoulders. Sofia met him at the door. Bad day. Complicated day. Problems in the south. Territory disputes that needed handling. Want to talk about it? Not really. Just want to be with you. She took his hand and led him to the bedroom, sat him on the edge of the bed, and stood between his legs, running her fingers through his hair. "Then be with me. Let the rest of it go for tonight." Dante pulled her closer, face pressed against her stomach, arms around her waist. This was safety for him now. This woman's presence, her acceptance, her love. "What did I do to deserve you?" he murmured. "You saw me when I was invisible. You saved me when I was broken. You loved me when I thought I was unlovable. That's what you did." He looked up at her. "I need to ask you something." "Okay. Marry me." Sofia's breath caught. "Dante, I know marriage is complicated for you after Alessandro. I know it carries trauma. If you never want to marry again, I'll understand. But I need you to know that I want forever with you. Whatever form that takes, I'm committed. You're it for me, Sofia. The last relationship I'll ever have. The person I choose every day for the rest of my life." Tears streamed down Sofia's face, but she was smiling. Yes, I'll marry you. Because this isn't like before. You're nothing like him. This is real and honest and based on actual love, not control. So yes, absolutely, yes. He stood and kissed her, both of them crying now, overwhelmed by the enormity of finding each other against all odds. "I'm going to spend every day making sure you never regret this choice," Dante promised. "I already don't. I never will." They married in the villa's garden 3 months later. Small ceremony with only the people who truly mattered. No spectacle, no show, just genuine commitment between two people who'd found each other in the rain and decided to build a life in the sunshine. Sofia wore a simple white dress, no veil, flowers in her hair. Dante wore a suit, but no tie, more relaxed than anyone had seen him. When they exchanged vows, Sofia spoke about second chances and finding home in a person rather than a place. Dante spoke about how she'd taught him that being strong meant being vulnerable, that true power was in loving fearlessly. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Even hardened criminals moved by the obvious, genuine emotion. Life after marriage wasn't perfect. Dante's work still created complications. There were nights he came home late, days he was gone, entirely handling situations. There were arguments about safety, about secrecy, about the toll his lifestyle took. But they worked through it every time. With honesty and commitment, Sofia finished her degree remotely, got offered a curator position at a respected gallery. Dante supported her career, proud of her success, even as he worried about her safety. They hired more security, found compromises, made it work because the alternative was unacceptable. 2 years into their marriage, Sophia told him she was pregnant. Dante's reaction was complex, joy mixed with terror. What if I'm like my father? What if I can't protect them? What if my world hurts them? Then we'll handle it together, Dante. You're not your father. You're the man who saved me, who's chosen every day to be better than you're raising. You'll be an amazing father. Their daughter, Elena, was born on a spring morning, screaming her arrival with impressive volume. Dante held her for the first time and wept. This tiny, perfect thing that was half Sophia, half him, completely miraculous. "She's so small," he whispered, terrified of dropping her, of hurting her, of failing her. "She's strong," Sophia corrected, "like her father." Parenthood changed them both. Dante restructured his involvement in the organization, taking less active role, delegating more. He wanted to be present for Elena's childhood in ways his own father never had been. Sophia took maternity leave from the gallery, devoted herself to their daughter while still maintaining her identity, her art, her independence. They were exhausted, overwhelmed, more in love than ever. Watching Dante with Elena, so gentle and patient and devoted, Sophia fell in love with him all over again. This dangerous man became the softest person in the world with his daughter, singing to her in Italian, reading stories, playing with complete unself-conscious joy. Years passed in the particular blur that happens when life is full and meaningful. Elena grew into a bright, curious child with Sophia's eyes and Dante's stubborn determination. The villa that had once been cold and empty was filled with laughter, scattered toys, finger paintings on expensive refrigerator doors. Dante had never imagined this life for himself, had never thought he could have normal and happiness alongside the complexity of his position. But Sophia had made it possible, had created a home where love was the foundation and everything else was just details. On Elena's 5th birthday, they threw a party in the garden, children running everywhere, parents Dante would have once considered beneath his notice, now friends because their kids were friends with his daughter. Sophia stood beside him watching the chaos, her hand in his. "Can you believe this is our life?" she asked. "Not even a little. If someone had told me 5 years ago that I'd be married with a daughter, hosting birthday parties, I'd have laughed them out of the room. Are you happy?" Deliriously, terrifyingly, completely. He squeezed her hand. "You saved me, you know. That night in the rain, I thought I was saving you. But really, you saved me. From loneliness, from becoming completely cold, from living a half-life of power without purpose. We saved each other. That's how the best love works." That evening, after Elena was asleep and the house was quiet again, Dante and Sophia sat in their bedroom, the same room where he'd first held her a year into their relationship, where they'd built their life together. "Do you ever regret it?" Dante asked. "Choosing me, this life, the complications that come with who I am?" "Never. Not once. You gave me everything I thought I'd lost: safety, love, a family, myself. I'm more me with you than I ever was before Alessandro, more than I thought possible after him. I still worry sometimes that my world will touch you, touch Elena, that choosing me puts you at risk." Sophia turned to face him fully. "Dante, life is risk. Loving anyone is risk. Yes, your world has dangers that most people don't face, but you've built such protection around us, such care into every decision, and more than that, you've shown me that danger isn't the same thing as fear. I'm not afraid anymore, of anything, because I know you'll move heaven and earth to keep us safe. And if something did happen, which it won't, but if it did, I'd still choose every moment we've had together." He pulled her close, overwhelmed by gratitude for this woman who'd stumbled into his life broken and had put them both back together. "I love you more than I have words for." "Then show me." And he did. Later, in the dark, quiet hours before dawn, Dante lay awake thinking about the trajectory of his life. He'd built an empire on fear and force, had been the man everyone respected, but no one truly knew. Had convinced himself that was enough, that power was its own reward. And then Sophia had appeared in the rain, crying outside his gates, and everything had changed. She'd shown him that strength wasn't in isolation, but in connection. That true power came from being vulnerable enough to love. That the greatest empire he could build wasn't one of money and influence, but one of family and devotion. In the morning, he'd return to the complexity of his work, the negotiations and decisions that came with his position. But he'd return to it as a man who had something to protect beyond ego and status. He'd return to it as a man who knew that the most important thing he'd ever done wasn't any business deal or territory won. It was pulling a broken woman in from the rain and choosing to see her, to save her, to love her, and in doing so, saving himself. Sophia stirred in his arms, murmuring something in her sleep before settling again. Dante pressed a kiss to her hair, content in ways he'd never imagined possible. The rain had washed away their old lives that night, but it had also watered the seeds of something new, something that grew into this, into love and family, and a home that felt like sanctuary instead of fortress. And if he'd learned anything from Sophia, it was that sometimes salvation comes from unexpected places, that the people who need saving often end up saving us right back, that broken things can be made whole when treated with patience and care. That love, real love, is the most powerful force that exists. More powerful than money, than violence, than fear. Sophia had taught him all of that and more. She'd taught him that his capacity for love wasn't dead, just dormant, waiting for the right person to wake it. She'd taught him that being vulnerable wasn't weakness, but the truest form of courage. She'd taught him that he could be both the man his position required and the man his family needed, that those identities could coexist. And most importantly, she'd taught him that he deserved happiness, that his past didn't define his future, that he could choose every day to be better than yesterday. As the first light of dawn began painting the sky, Dante closed his eyes, finally ready for sleep, secure in the knowledge that he'd wake up to Sophia beside him, to Elena's laughter in the morning, to a life he'd never dared imagine, but now couldn't imagine living without. Sometimes the greatest changes start with the smallest moments, with seeing someone who needs help and choosing to act, with pulling someone in from the rain even when logic says to walk away, with opening your heart despite every reason to keep it closed. Dante had done all of that, and it had given him everything. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Comment where you're listening from, and if you felt it was really worth it, consider becoming a member to get early access to upcoming stories. Your support makes all the difference, because maybe that's the truth we all need to learn, that we're not defined by the worst things that happen to us, or the worst things we've done. We're defined by what we choose to do next, by how we treat people who need us, by whether we have the courage to love even when it's risky. Sophia had been broken, had lost herself completely. Dante had been isolated, had forgotten how to feel, and they'd found each other in the rain and decided that broken and isolated was no way to live. They decided to try, to risk, to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could build something beautiful from the wreckage of their pasts. And they had. They'd built a life, a family, a love that was real and true and strong enough to weather anything. Not perfect, never perfect, but honest, but committed, but worth everything. That night in the rain, when Dante pulled Sophia inside, and she cried the words, "Never leave me again," neither of them knew what they were starting. Neither of them could see the future that waited, the healing and the love and the family they'd build. But they took the first step anyway, and that made all the difference.